Chapter 13:10. Origin was something that Chu Xiu had learned from Tianhun. Although Chu Xiu could not completely believe everything that Tianhun had said regarding the origin, Tianhun should not have lied to Chu Xiu. Now, the devil qi in Chu Xiu's body should be the devil origin that had descended to the mortal world. Although this devil origin usually did not show itself, it had helped Chu Xiu a lot at critical moments. However, now that Chu Xiu's strength was not enough, he could not mobilize it at all. He also did not know how to mobilize the power of the devil origin. Now that another yang origin was about to be in his hands, what would it bring to Chu Xiu? At this time, Xuewuli was following behind Chu Xiu. With an extremely obedient look, he told him everything that he had done in the Gate of Heaven. He was a smart person. At this time, he did not exaggerate or show off his achievements. As long as he did what he deserved, even if Chu Xiu wanted to buy people's hearts, he would still give him what he deserved. Hearing this, Chu Xiu nodded with satisfaction and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, I promised you a hall leader position before, so I will definitely not go back on my word. In the future, you can establish an independent hall in the Holy Church. All the surrendered disciples in the Gate of Heaven can be under your command. In the Holy Church, I will also give you a portion to help you stabilize your position. You should know about the Daoist matters. In the future, I will also bring you to the Daoist and give you resources to help you enter the mysterious heaven and earth realm as soon as possible." Hearing this, Xuewuli was immediately overjoyed. He bowed deeply to Chu Xiu and said, "Your subordinate thanks you for your guidance. I wish you a long life and unify the Jianghu." Chu Xiu casually waved his hand and said, "Forget it, the Holy Church does not care about this. As long as you do your job well, it is more important than anything else." Although Xuewuli's flattery made people feel relaxed and happy, they would get tired of it after listening to it for too long. Xuewuli nodded and pointed to a stone wall that was engraved with all kinds of runes. "Leader, this is the center of the Gate of Heaven's sealing formation." Chu Xiu nodded and let Xuewuli leave first, while he carefully looked around. The shape of this stone wall was very peculiar. It was shaped like an arch, and it was densely engraved with runes. In truth, this was the true form of the gate. The other 10 formations, as well as the ones on the exalted divine palace's side, were used to seal the gate. 10,000 years ago, the cultivators of the lower realms had entered the Daoist continent through this place, and this was where the extreme yang source was sealed. Chu Xiu took a deep breath. Without the slightest hesitation, Gang Qi erupted from the formation-breaking tool in his hand to the extreme, affecting the surrounding laws of heaven and earth. It transformed into a giant blade that was hundreds of meters long and slashed at the stone wall. With a loud explosion, the entire stone wall suddenly emitted a dazzling golden light, and a part of the runes shattered. But it was only a part, and the entire stone wall was still extremely stable. As Chu Xiu's blade fell, the runes became fewer and fewer, and the stone wall began to tremble. Even the sealing formations in the 10 halls of the Gate of Heaven began to crack. When Chu Xiu's final slash landed, the 10 formations completely exploded. At the same time, cracks started to appear on the stone walls. In an instant, a wave of extremely dense energy of the universe surged out from the cracks and rushed towards them. It was a familiar aura, an aura that belonged to the exalted divine palace. At this time, Yi Shaonan and the others, as well as the other martial artists, were waiting at the foot of Kunlun. The reason why they hadn't left was simple: they were waiting for Chu Xiu's promise. If it was true, then the Kunlun devil cult could eat the meat, and they could drink the soup, then everything would be fine. If Chu Xiu had really lied to them this time, then even if the Kunlun devil cult really had the capital to dominate the world, they would not sit still and wait for death. After all, the Kunlun devil cult had already become so powerful 500 years ago, and yet there were still people who dared to resist. In the instant that Chu Xiu broke through the heavenly gate, the powerful energy completely enveloped them, causing their expressions to change. They were both surprised and overjoyed. They had never seen such a level of qi of heaven and earth in any secret land or treasure land. What Chu Xiu said was true. Of course, this was only on Kunlun Mountain, next to the Gate of Heaven, so the qi of heaven and earth they felt was very rich. If it were spread throughout the martial arts world, it would not be so obvious, but it was enough to raise the level of qi in the martial arts world by a level. At this time, Chu Xiu's attention was not on the raging qi of heaven and earth, but on the crack in the center of the stone wall, where a golden light had emerged. The golden light was very faint and inconspicuous, as if the power of the broken runes had not been completely consumed. In fact, Chu Xiu did not even notice it at first. What really made Chu Xiu lock onto it was that the moment it appeared, the source of demonic path in Chu Xiu's body, which was silent most of the time, suddenly moved slightly, as if attracted by the other party. Chu Xiu carefully drove his gang qi, wanting to hold it in his hand. But who would have thought that the source of yang was not difficult to capture? When Chu Xiu's gang qi fell on it, it instantly escaped into Chu Xiu's body, so that Chu Xiu did not even have a chance to defend himself. This moment also scared Chu Xiu. He was going to study this thing first, but who would have thought that it would directly escape into his body, not giving him a chance at all. At this time, there were both the source of yang and the source of demonic path in Chu Xiu's body. These two sources in Chu Xiu's dantian were attracting each other, head and tail connected, like a tai chi yin and yang fish, rotating in an unusually harmonious and accurate cycle. Even when the two sources were different in color, their positions were exactly the same, so accurate that it was as if they were made by heaven. Furthermore, at the instant when the two source energies merged and revolved, the collision of the two brought forth a trace of energy ripple. It was just a tiny energy ripple, but it filled Chu Xiu's body in an instant, causing all the power in his body to explode abruptly. Chu Xiu groaned in pain in an instant. The next moment, with absolute willpower, Chu Xiu controlled his body to forcibly refine the energy. In fact, cracks even appeared on the skin around him, making him look like a person made of blood. It was an extremely terrifying scene. Chu Xiu had not expected that he would be able to fight against Jun Wuxian and kill him only because he had exhausted too much of his energy. But in this place, he would actually be seriously injured. Fortunately, to the two source energies, the energy ripple was only a trace that was unconsciously released. As such, Chu Xiu was still able to suppress it. After he completely suppressed the energy ripple, he discovered that his cultivation had skyrocketed to the third heavenly layer martial immortal. That stunned Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu had experienced many breakthroughs in cultivation, it was the first time he had made such a baffling breakthrough. The power of the extreme yin source energies and the extreme yang source energies was simply terrifying. Just the trace of extremely weak energy that leaked out when the two source energies merged allowed him to step into the next heavenly layer. According to what Tianhun had said, the gathering of three source energies of the same attribute might really be able to open the legendary longevity heaven. Although the two source energies were in his body, Chu Xiu did not know whether they were good or bad. He could not use them for the time being. However, it was a treasure among treasures. Even if he could not use it, he still had to get his hands on it first. At that moment, in the instant that Chu Xiu shattered the heavenly gate and obtained the extreme yang source energies, a violent tremor came from the exalted divine palace. However, the tremor was only contained within the central prefecture. Only those who stood at the peak of the Daoist continent could sense it. In an instant, several halos of light appeared in the sky above the exalted divine palace's formation. They were not physical objects. Even experts at the ninth heavenly layer of martial immortal could not instantly traverse a region and arrive at the exalted divine palace. This was merely a means of communication that they had constructed when they were building the formation. A dignified and solemn voice came from one of the halos that was filled with dazzling Buddhist light. The formation of the lower realm has been damaged. Something must have happened to the gatekeepers we left in the lower realm. In another halos of light, the color of primal chaos stirred. A voice that was difficult to distinguish whether it was a man or a woman spoke with a hint of mockery. Something happened? Thousands of years ago, when we completely lost contact with them, they were already in trouble. Starlight sparkled in another halos of light as a gentle voice spoke. Everyone, arguing about this is useless. The formation of the lower realm has been destroyed, which means that the formation in the exalted divine palace won't be able to hold out for much longer. After some time, we will be able to reconnect the passage to the lower realm. Is everyone ready for this? Or should we reinforce the formation and maintain its original state? The voice in the Buddhist light spoke again, this time with a sigh. Perhaps this is fate. We made a mistake 10,000 years ago. The Daoist is not a place that belongs to us. We should have faced our tribulations in the lower realm. After the tribulation, we will naturally be reborn. We forcefully broke through the Daoist barrier, slaughtered the natives, and occupied this world that does not belong to us. We have violated the karma of the heavenly Tao. This is our original sin. When that person appeared from the lower realm 500 years ago, countless Daoist experts died. Perhaps this is the punishment that the heavens have bestowed upon us. Now, there are already secret realms that have begun to wither and decline. The tribulation of heaven and earth has never passed. The tribulation is not aimed at heaven and earth, but at us. Today, the formation of the lower realm has been broken and the passage between the two realms has reopened. Perhaps this is the guidance of the heavens for us to return to where we came from and leave this world that does not belong to us. The androgynous voice became even more shrill and mocking. Hypocrites! If you are so unyielding, why did you move the heavenly Tao to the Daoist? You know that this is the original sin, but in the western regions, you showed no mercy when you slaughtered the barbarians. The karma of the heavenly Tao? I am the heavenly Tao, I am karma. An even more dignified voice came from the Buddhist light. Heretic demons, how dare you speak of the karma of the heavenly Tao? As the anger between the two grew stronger and stronger, the Tao Master's old but sonorous voice suddenly descended. Enough. Chapter 13:11. Although Daoist Xianxia wasn't known as the Daoist's #1 Daoist, his prestige was still there. Everyone fell silent as soon as he spoke. Xianxia, what do you think? The gentle voice rang out again from within the circle of sparkling starlight. There's no point in arguing here, because we have no idea what's going on in the lower realm. Is there a problem with the people, or is there a problem with the formation? My suggestion is to let nature take its course. You have poured so much effort into the exalted divine palace, and I'm sure none of you are willing to see it destroyed now. So whether we descend to the lower realms or not, when the formation's power is completely exhausted and it naturally disintegrates, we will be able to descend while preserving the exalted divine palace. But in the meantime, we should make preparations. Even if we descend to the lower realms, we must still prepare the heaven stone. According to the ancestors, when we first came to the Daoist, we lost many of our companions because we didn't have enough heaven stone. Those people are still buried in Central Province. After a long while, Daoist Xianxia nodded. I agree with Xianxia's suggestion. There was no response from the other circles of light, but they didn't object either. It seemed that they were in favor of the idea as well. Daoist Xianxia nodded. If that's the case, then let's all disperse. As the light faded, the exalted divine palace regained its calm. Chu Xiu didn't know that his actions had alarmed the Daoist higher-ups. But now that the formation was destroyed, especially without the suppression of the Yang source, the passage between the lower and lower realms would soon be completely destroyed, so Chu Xiu had to make preparations. Once outside, Chu Xiu asked Mei Qinglian, who was waiting outside, have the other sects left? Mei Qinglian nodded. After realizing that we weren't deceiving them, they all dispersed. Chu Xiu nodded and called Xue Wuli over. Take me to the sutra depository of the Gate of Heaven. Elder Wei and the rest should come too. Let's see if there's anything valuable. From Chu Xiu's point of view, the most valuable thing in the entire Elysium, apart from the Yang ability source, was the Elysium's treasured cultivation technique. Although the Elysium had been left behind by the Daoist in the lower world, they were not abandoned by the Daoist. Instead, they were the true loyal subordinates of the Daoist sections. They risked their lives to defend the lower world's formation. Therefore, the cultivation techniques they possessed were the core inheritance secret arts of the Daoist powers. They were extremely precious. Just look at Jun Wuxian, the clan master. Apart from Dugu Weiwei's inheritance, Chu Xiu's other cultivation techniques were obtained by himself through various means or by killing others. That was why he was able to gather all three branches of Taoism, Buddhism, and Demon. However, Jun Wuxian had only relied on the inheritance of the Elysium to control all the cultivation techniques of the three sections. There were even some extremely powerful magical powers. This was enough to prove the richness of the Elysium's collection. After Xue Wuli brought Chu Xiu into the sutra depository of the Elysium, Chu Xiu allowed them to search freely. At the same time, Chu Xiu was also searching. In fact, he had long been interested in the two cultivation techniques that Jun Wuxian possessed. One was the indestructible golden body, and the other was his 6 paths of Buddha disillusionment wheel. The indestructible golden body was the most powerful magical power of the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha. Its power was naturally amazing. However, Chu Xiu did not intend to cultivate it completely. Instead, he had a bold idea. The same was true for the 6 paths of Buddha disillusionment wheel. Chu Xiu did not even want to walk the path that Dugu Weiwei had walked in the past. How could he walk the path of Jun Wuxian, a defeated opponent? He only wanted to combine it with his 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet to create a new and powerful cultivation technique. After obtaining the cultivation technique that he had chosen, Chu Xiu immediately entered into a state of seclusion. At the same time, he allowed the others to choose their own cultivation techniques to cultivate. In the Elysium seclusion chamber, Chu Xiu held the secret manual of the indestructible golden body and deeply imprinted every word in it into his mind. The reason why Chu Xiu wanted the indestructible golden body was very simple. He wanted to merge the indestructible golden body with the 9 heavens demonic golden body. These two cultivation techniques, one Buddhist and the other demonic, seemed to others to be playing with fire. However, Chu Xiu had been cultivating both Buddhism and demonic for a long time, so he did not have to worry about this at all. The sudden emergence of this idea was also the inspiration brought to Chu Xiu by the fusion of the demonic way and the Yang ability origin. Righteous, demonic, yin, and yang were twins. Although they repelled each other, as long as they were used well, they would be able to achieve a delicate balance, just like these two origins. Chu Xiu had the same idea. It was not difficult to cultivate the indestructible golden body, and Chu Xiu did not intend to push it to the same level as Jun Wuxian, which was comparable to the divine powers. The difficult part was how to master a delicate balance between the two cultivation techniques. It took more than 20 days for Chu Xiu to finally master the balance. At this time, Chu Xiu was surrounded by golden Sanskrit and pitch-black demonic qi at the same time. The Sanskrit appeared on the golden body, but the deep demonic qi turned into armor, lingering around his body. The two forces repelled each other, but also depended on each other to achieve a balance. Letting out a long breath, Chu Xiu dispelled this state. At this time, there was no opponent, and he could not estimate to what extent his strength and defense could reach in this state. This kind of thing still needed to be practiced in actual combat. But now that these two cultivation techniques were merged together, it was not appropriate to use the previous name. Chu Xiu thought about it and named it the Holy Demon Indestructible Body. Now, Chu Xiu had not yet deduced it to a perfect state, but after the fusion of the 9 heavens demonic golden body of the ancient demon god Lu Wenho and the indestructible golden body of Tian Luo Baosha, it might really reach the state of indestructible when it reached the extreme peak. After he was done with this cultivation technique, Chu Xiu opened the second cultivation technique that he had chosen. The second cultivation technique that Chu Xiu chose was actually not the 6 paths of pagoda disillusionment wheel, but the origin of the 6 paths of pagoda disillusionment wheel, which was also the secret technique of Tian Luo Baosha, the 6 paths of pagoda disillusionment wheel. The 6 paths of pagoda disillusionment wheel was an extension of the 6 paths of pagoda disillusionment wheel, and it was an exclusive martial skill that carried his strong martial arts imprint. Of course, Chu Xiu would not walk the same path as Jun Wuxian, so he had to look at the source. The 6 paths of pagoda disillusionment wheel was a part of the scripture, which mainly explained the concept of the 6 paths of reincarnation, followed by the cultivation technique, which was to materialize the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation. The Hell Dao was sinister and vicious, the Animal Dao was fierce and violent, the Azura Dao was murderous and evil, the Hungry Ghost Dao was evil and strange, the Celestial Dao was mighty, and the Human Dao was the most bizarre, which was to eliminate all kinds of strange powers. This cultivation technique was very strange, and Chu Xiu had never heard of it in the Daoist. Although Chu Xiu was not a Buddhist, and most of the Buddhists wanted to eat him alive, Chu Xiu had cultivated many Buddhist cultivation techniques. He even dared to say that even if the remaining Buddhists from the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery came, their attainments in Buddhist cultivation techniques would not be as good as Chu Xiu. In the eyes of the orthodox Buddhist warriors, the 6 paths of reincarnation wheel of reincarnation was simply rebellious to the extreme, and could even be said to be the heresy of heresy. It showed the ugly power of the 6 paths of reincarnation directly in front of you. Cultivating a few of the powers was no different from rebelling, but it was very much in line with Chu Xiu's appetite. The path that Jun Wuxian took was to put his state of mind into the 6 paths of reincarnation to temper himself, feel the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation, and then control them, turning them into one, and strangling any existence. This was the 6 paths of reincarnation wheel of reincarnation. After Chu Xiu read the 6 paths of reincarnation wheel of reincarnation, his path was exactly the opposite of Jun Wuxian's. The 6 paths of reincarnation itself was a whole, why should it be combined? When all kinds of powers were added together, it would be the real power of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Especially with the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet, he could perfectly control the charm of the 6 paths of reincarnation. This time, it took Chu Xiu 2 months to figure out the general idea of the cultivation method. At this time, around Chu Xiu, the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet shone brightly, and golden Buddha light formed a complete 6 paths of reincarnation around him. The power of the 6 paths of reincarnation continued to probe out, and the power of various attributes intertwined back and forth, sometimes combining, but reaching a strange balance. Even at this time, if there was someone in the 6 paths of reincarnation, as long as the other party was really attacked by the 6 paths of reincarnation, their own primordial spirit would be damaged according to the various characteristics of the 6 paths of reincarnation. It could be said that it was a secret technique of the primordial spirit and the body, a double attack, which was stronger and more unpredictable than Jun Wuxian's 6 paths of reincarnation. Chu Xiu also discovered that ever since he merged the extreme yang source and the devil source in his body, he seemed to have comprehended something, but it also seemed that he did not comprehend anything. Instead, he subconsciously pursued a kind of balance. Previously, Tianhun had told him not to follow the old path of Dugu Weiwei, but Chu Xiu had no clue. Now, he finally understood that he had actually embarked on a different path from Dugu Weiwei. After successfully deriving this cultivation method, Chu Xiu scratched his head. He still had to give this cultivation method a name. Chu Xiu was very satisfied with the power of this cultivation method. At present, he had only succeeded in the initial derivation, but in fact, it was already not inferior to the power of Jun Wuxian's 6 paths of reincarnation wheel of reincarnation. When it was developed to the extreme, it could even surpass some of the spells, so this name was very important. Based on the basic principle that the longer the name, the stronger it was. After thinking for a while, Chu Xiu finally named it, 6 Paths of Saha Wondrous Splendor Wheel of Reincarnation. Saga represented the boundless world, and in the evolution of the 6 paths of reincarnation, it actually contained the various powers of the boundless world. In addition to these 2 Buddhist cultivation methods, Chu Xiu also chose a secret ancient book of Taoism, the Taishian scripture. The Taishian scripture was a secret ancient book of the 3 Pristines Temple. It did not have any offensive martial arts skills, but it was the simplest of the great Tao, pointing directly to the origin of heaven and earth. Taoism cultivation methods were the most gentle, and they sought a subtle balance among the rules of all things. It was just like the 2 origins in Chu Xiu's body. Therefore, after seeing the Taishian scripture, Chu Xiu casually flipped through it, and almost without hesitation, he decided to make it one of the main cultivation methods. Chapter 13:12. Chu Xiu chose 2 Buddhist techniques and 1 Daoist technique from the Gate of Heaven. In fact, there were quite a number of demonic techniques in the Gate of Heaven, but Chu Xiu wasn't interested in any of them. Most of his demonic techniques came from Dugu Weiwei. How could he be interested in other demonic techniques? Moreover, Chu Xiu had the demonic path of creation. It was a powerful demonic technique that could lead to the great Tao. At least, in terms of demonic techniques, Chu Xiu wasn't lacking. As for the techniques in the Gate of Heaven, after Wei Shuya and the others sorted them out, there were 11 of them. It should be known that they were techniques. The appearance of every technique meant that the ancestor of the technique was a powerful martial immortal. While martial immortals were capable of creating divine abilities, not every martial immortal was capable of creating divine abilities. Chu Xiu had asked Lu Sanjin before. There were only 5 or 6 techniques in the entire Imperial Sky Pavilion. The collection of the Gate of Heaven had already surpassed that of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. However, Chu Xiu had already flipped through those sacred arts, but he did not choose a single one. The technique that Chu Xiu had, the cross-shaped lotus seal, consumed little energy, but it had strong limitations. It specialized in suppressing evil and strange powers. The phenomenon of heaven and earth was the pinnacle of power. Chu Xiu was most familiar with it and could change it at will. The clear sky illuminating shadow was powerful, but it consumed a shocking amount of energy as well. It had to be used cautiously and it depended on the occasion. Now that he had learned all the techniques from weak to strong, there wasn't much meaning for Chu Xiu to waste his energy to comprehend the other techniques. For example, the fire dragon lamp that Jun Wuxian had unleashed was very powerful, but it might not be stronger than Chu Xiu's phenomenon of heaven and earth. The techniques in the Gate of Heaven were basically at the same level as Jun Wuxian's fire dragon lamp. So, even if he successfully cultivated it, it wouldn't be of much use to Chu Xiu. The only thing that interested Chu Xiu was the head-piercing 7 arrows that Jun Wuxian had used on him. This divine ability was strange, vicious, and incomparably poisonous. It could be said to be very interesting. Chu Xiu had once tried to cultivate it, but he found that he couldn't fit this divine power at all. It was useless to forcefully cultivate it. Divine powers were not cultivation techniques. Even if a cultivation technique was not compatible with you, as long as you wanted to learn it, you would be able to learn the basics. However, if the divine ability was not compatible with you, then you didn't know how to use it. There was no such thing as entry or great accomplishment. However, Chu Xiu didn't care about it. It was normal for a straightforward person like him to not be compatible with the sinister and vicious magical power of the 7 nailhead arrows. Shang Tianliang and the others had also gained quite a lot. There were too many cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques in the heavenly gates. There were countless body refinement techniques of the Daoist, Buddhist, and demonic sections. Almost everyone had gained something. Therefore, the group of people from the Kunlun devil cult occupied the basilica that used to belong to the divine generals of Elysium and began to prepare to train in seclusion. Chu Xiu was also preparing to go into seclusion for a period of time. His breakthrough to the 3rd heavenly layer of martial immortal was a bit inexplicable. He was not prepared at all. It would inevitably cause his cultivation to become unstable. So, he needed to go into seclusion for a period of time to stabilize his cultivation. However, before Chu Xiu went into seclusion, Grandmaster Yuan Ji sent news that someone from the Daoist side was looking for him. It was the Vice Palace Master of the Southern Region's Heavenly Demon Palace, Yuan Kongcheng. He seemed to be very anxious. Chu Xiu and Yuan Kongcheng had cooperated to annihilate the Blissful Demon Palace. Now, the Heavenly Demon Palace was the #1 demonic sect in the Southern Region. The cooperation between the two sides was quite good. So, Yuan Kongcheng was probably not looking for trouble. Chu Xiu had no choice but to temporarily put aside his seclusion and return to the southern barbaric land. Then, through the formation of the southern barbaric land, he returned to the Daoist side. Stepping into the reception hall of the Tsangnan mansion, Chu Xiu said with a smile on his face, "Palace Lord Yuan, you have graced us with your presence. I was in closed-door cultivation and was unable to welcome you in time. I hope Palace Lord Yuan will not take offense." Yuan Kongcheng said with a strange expression, "Official Chu, you can still smile? During this period of time, did you really not hear the slightest news?" Chu Xiu said in surprise, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Since the end of the Daoist Divine Palace, Chu Xiu had focused all his energy on the lower realms. After all, after seriously injuring Jun Wuxian, Chu Xiu must use the fastest time to deal with the Gate of Heaven. Otherwise, when Jun Wuxian recovered from his injuries, this rare opportunity would be wasted. So, on the Daoist side, Chu Xiu really didn't pay any special attention. Yuan Kongcheng said in a deep voice, "Official Chu, I have heard of your performance in the Daoist Divine Palace. It is indeed very dazzling. Using the profound principles of heaven and earth to kill Xianxia, who had stepped into the martial immortal realm. This kind of achievement is almost as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns in 10,000 years. In the rankings of the Daoist Divine Palace, you are one of the 6 strongest people, on par with the geniuses of the 3 Pristines Temple, Su Guishan, and the others. You crossed the gap between heaven and man with one step and entered the martial immortal realm. It can be said that your performance in the Daoist Divine Palace is definitely the most outstanding of all the cultivators who entered the Daoist Divine Palace. But, did you not think about how many people you have offended in this line of work? You forced a disciple of the world's sword sects to cripple an arm and humiliated them. You even killed Venerable Guyu, Divine General Zhenlong, and exalted swordsman Ling Tian. You should know that it is not easy for Venerable Guyu to cultivate a successor, but you, in the end, killed all of them. Although my description is a little inappropriate, what you did is no different from ending their line of descendants. And in the Sanskrit temple, Xianxia is the new temple master of the Vishnu temple, a person with a limitless future. Originally, the Sanskrit temple planned to let him step into the 3rd heavenly layer of martial immortal realm in the Daoist, and then after returning to the Sanskrit temple, undergo the 3 gods' empowerment, he would immediately rise by another 3rd heavenly layer and stabilize the situation in the Vishnu temple. Weren't you at the 2nd heavenly layer when you came out of the Daoist Divine Palace? How come you are at the 3rd heavenly layer now? Forget it, let's not talk about you. The Sanskrit temple planned well, but in the end, you killed them without even giving them a chance to enter the Daoist Divine Palace. How can the Sanskrit temple let it go? You should know to leave a way out, and it will be easier to meet them in the future. You have done so ruthlessly, how can the others not react? This time, I have already received the news that led by the world sword sects, Divine General Zhenlong, Su Tianya, Venerable Guyu, Fang Baidu, and exalted swordsman Ling Tian, Shengjiu Yuan are all coming to find trouble with you, and among them, the Sanskrit temple may also send people. Official Chu, the last time you cooperated with the demonic palace, you and I have some friendship, so I came to remind you this time. Chu Xiu slightly raised his eyebrows and cupped his hands at Yuan Kongcheng, saying, "Thank you for the reminder, Palace Master Yuan. I know the principle of leaving a way out, but I want to leave a way out, but they did not think of leaving a way out. Moreover, the Central Plains is a trap, so it is normal for them to die, isn't it? They were killed because they were inferior to me, but now they still have the face to find trouble with me. These so-called famous prime sovereigns are all losers. Right, it is very common for prime sovereign successors to be killed when they travel the pugilistic world. Aren't these three breaking the rules by coming to find trouble with me now? Yuan Kongqing smiled bitterly. Rules are just a tacit unspoken rule, and no one will care even if they are a little flexible. Xingjiu Yuan and the other two will naturally not come to find trouble with you openly, but if the World Sword sects invite them to help, then there will be no problem. Before I came, the World Sword sects were already discussing this matter, and I was delayed for a few days on the road, so I'm afraid they are already here. In short, Official Chu, you should be prepared for this matter. I will take my leave first. After all, I am also a member of the Southern Region sects, and it is not good for others to see me here. Yuan Kongqing left in a hurry, but what puzzled him was that there did not seem to be any fear or worry on Chu Xiu's face. One must know that he was currently being targeted by the World Sword sects, several martial immortals, and even the Sanskrit sect. The Imperial Sky Pavilion alone could not protect him, so why did he look so fearless? Yuan Kongqing did not ask much. He was here to bring a message to Chu Xiu out of an opportunistic reason. He had only worked with Chu Xiu once, and did not have much of a relationship. As they were both from the Southern Region sects, they must have planted spies in each other's sections. The World Sword sects discussions were not too secretive, so it was normal for Yuan Kongqing to know. Therefore, he could say or not say anything about this matter. However, Yuan Kongqing always had a feeling that the height that Chu Xiu could reach in the future might be beyond his imagination. When Chu Xiu was still in the heaven and earth elucidation state, Yuan Kongqing could not see through him, and it was even more so now. Therefore, he wanted to inform Chu Xiu and form a good relationship with him. In the future, if Chu Xiu died, he would not suffer any loss, but if Chu Xiu survived, he would owe him a favor. After Yuan Kongqing left, Lu Jianghe and Mei Qinglian walked in. Chu Xiu said in surprise, "You two did not go into seclusion?" Mei Qinglian shook her head and said, "The Red Lotus Hellfire of the Red Lotus is enough for me to study, so I only chose 2 ordinary secret techniques that are the icing on the cake, so there is no need for me to go into seclusion. When I heard that the Daoist is in trouble, I came to see if there is anything I can help with." Lu Jianghe nodded and said, "Me too." Chu Xiu waved his hand casually and said, "It's not a big deal, it's nothing more than someone who is unwilling to lose and came looking for trouble. I have already expected this. Old Lu, come with me to High Heaven sect. Qinglian, you stay and guard the Daoist side. While you are at it, tell the barbarians to report immediately if they see any southern territory cultivators coming." Chu Xiu wasn't surprised by Yuan Kongqing's words. In fact, he was already prepared for it. He had always been accustomed to speculating about others with the greatest malice. He had killed so many people in the Daoist territory, so there was no guarantee that someone would come looking for trouble with him. As for the rule that Gu Zun could not act, Chu Xiu actually did not believe it. Because among the Daoist, there were basically no rules that could restrain martial immortal masters. It was just that Chu Xiu did not expect that this group of people would come together to find trouble with him. Chu Xiu's countermeasure was also very simple. He had spent so much effort to save Fang Yinglong last time, and it was not in vain. Now, it was his High Heaven sect's turn to return this favor. Chapter 13:13. The atmosphere in High Heaven sect's High Heaven city was somewhat depressing. When Chu Xiu arrived, Elder Wu of High Heaven sect came out to greet him. Seeing the cultivators of High Heaven sect like this, Chu Xiu couldn't help but ask curiously, "Why do I feel that the atmosphere in your High Heaven sect is a bit off?" Elder Wu looked at Chu Xiu curiously and said, "Xianyuan Wushuang was killed by a demonic ghost in the exalted divine palace. Official Chu, you should know about this. Hearing Elder Wu's words, Chu Xiu finally realized that it was because of Xianyuan Wushuang. Chu Xiu had really forgotten about this matter. It wasn't that Chu Xiu's memory was bad, but when he killed Xianyuan Wushuang, the latter was no longer a threat in Chu Xiu's eyes. Killing him was as easy as stepping on an ant. Chu Xiu could remember Jun Wuxian, who had almost killed him in the past, but he had subconsciously ignored Xianyuan Wushuang. He couldn't react for a moment. Seeing Chu Xiu's appearance, even Lu Jianghu felt that Chu Xiu had gone too far. You killed him, but you still don't remember him. If Xianyuan Wushuang's body could be found, he would probably scratch his coffin in anger. After expressing his condolences to Elder Wu with a seemingly sincere expression, Chu Xiu went to meet Fang Yinglong and the others with Lu Jianghu. In the reception hall, Fang Yinglong, Qin Baiyuan, Linghu Xianshan, and the other martial immortals of High Heaven sect were all present. As soon as he saw them, Chu Xiu put on a sorrowful look and said, "I've heard about Brother Xianyuan. I'm sorry for your loss. Although I had some disputes with Brother Xianyuan in the past, it can be said that no discord, no concord. I originally thought that after he became a martial immortal and took over High Heaven sect, we could meet again, forget our enmity, and guard the Eastern Domain together. I didn't expect that he would be defeated in the exalted Divine Palace. When I saw him for the last time, I suggested that Brother Xianyuan act with me, but Brother Xianyuan was also a proud man and insisted on killing the demonic ghost with his own strength. I didn't expect that would be the last time we met." Chu Xiu's attitude was extremely sincere, and it didn't make him look sad. Nor did it make others feel that he was being polite. It was as if he was truly sad for the death of an old friend. His acting skills had also improved after he became a martial immortal. Was it? Lu Jianghu also lowered his head behind Chu Xiu, as if he was also silently mourning. However, in reality, he just didn't want Fang Yinglong and the others to see his twisted expression. At this moment, Lu Jianghu was already roaring in his heart, "There's actually such a shameless person in this world." Lu Jianghu was completely convinced. It made sense that Chu Xiu could be the sect leader while he was only a demon exalt. At this moment, Lu Jianghu was truly convinced. There was a reason why Chu Xiu could become the sect master while he was just a demon lord. Fang Yinglong and the others didn't doubt Chu Xiu. It made sense that Xianyuan Wushuang was killed by the demonic ghost. Fang Yinglong and the others didn't doubt Chu Xiu because the evidence was there. They saw with their own eyes that Xianyuan Wushuang died at the hands of the demonic ghost. So, Fang Yinglong just sighed. Qin Baiyuan shook his head helplessly. Maybe this is fate. Of course, it's also our responsibility. Wushuang is too headstrong. We told him before that if he doesn't become a half-step martial immortal in the Central Province, he can't participate in the competition for the exalted Divine Palace. But he didn't listen to us. Lu Sanjin of the Imperial Sky Pavilion isn't as strong as him, but he listened to Zhongqiushui and cultivated in the Central Province. His strength also improved greatly. He just doesn't understand that only by living can he have a future. If he died, he would be nothing. By the way, Chu, why did you come here this time? Although they didn't doubt Chu Xiu, they didn't believe that Chu Xiu came all the way to High Heaven sect just to mourn for Xianyuan Wushuang. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I came to ask for help from High Heaven sect. Sect Master Fang once said that High Heaven sect can do something for me. I didn't want to use this promise, but now I have no choice." With that, Chu Xiu told Fang Yinglong and the others about the people he offended in the exalted Divine Palace and their plan to make trouble for him. After listening, Fang Yinglong and the other two felt a toothache. Even they couldn't help but admire Chu Xiu for offending so many powerhouses in one go. How many people did he kill in the exalted Divine Palace? Fang Yinglong said helplessly, "Chu, do you know how much trouble you've gotten yourself into? Since the sword sect of the world wants to make trouble for you, the person who will come will definitely not be ordinary. It's most likely one of the 3 sword saints, Mu Baishuang, who is in the 7th layer martial immortal realm. Of the 3 prime sovereigns, Divine Dragon Subduing General, Su Tianya, is in the 4th layer martial immortal realm. Venerable Guyu, Fang Baidu, is in the 4th layer martial immortal realm. And Venerable Ling Tian, Sheng Jiuyuan, is the strongest, having reached the 7th layer martial immortal realm. As for the Sanskrit sect, it's still unknown who they will send. This kind of power is enough to attack my high heaven sect. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, that's why I came to ask high heaven sect for help. Of course, if high heaven sect is in trouble, I can understand. Fang Yinglong and the other 2 looked at each other helplessly. Of course they were in trouble, but could they refuse? High heaven sect cared about their face, especially when the promise was made in front of everyone. If they went back on their word now, where would the face of a great sect with a history of 10,000 years be? With a sigh, Fang Yinglong said, Chu, you go back first. We will take action, but we need a few days to prepare. Chu Xiu nodded and left with Lu Jianghe. He wasn't worried at all that Fang Yinglong and the others would go back on their word. If they wanted to be perfunctory, they wouldn't be perfunctory here. After Chu Xiu left, Linghu Xianshan frowned and said, are we really going to take action? But with so many martial immortals, how are we going to stop them? Fang Yinglong said helplessly, words spoken are like water spilled. My high heaven sect's reputation is important. It's just that when I made a promise to this Chu Xiu, I didn't expect him to cause so much trouble. But don't worry, don't forget where we are, this is the Eastern Territory. If we move the soaring heaven seal to the southern barbaric land, it can be used just as well, but its power will be slightly reduced. It's also good to repel them. Right now, the southern territory is eyeing Chu Xiu covetously. He is also a member of the Eastern Territory. With him in the southern barbaric land, he is the first barrier. If he is gone, our situation will be even worse. Hearing that Fang Yinglong wanted to use the soaring heaven seal, Linghu Xianshan and Qin Baiyuan were a little surprised. The soaring heaven seal was the most precious treasure of their high heaven sect. It was built 10,000 years ago when they first came to the Daoist continent, using a part of the Eastern Territory's dragon vein. At that time, high heaven sect was the strongest in the entire Eastern Territory, so their first ancestral founder intercepted a section of the dragon vein and refined it into this supreme treasure. However, this thing had some limitations because it was not a weapon and was huge. The further it was from the Eastern Territory's main dragon vein, the weaker its power would be. Therefore, most of the time, it was located inside high heaven sect and rarely moved. It had only been used a few times over the past 10,000 years. That was why they were so surprised when Fang Yinglong proposed to use the soaring heaven seal. However, Fang Yinglong was the sect master, and it seemed to be the only way now, so they could only nod and agree. At the same time, outside the World Sword sect, Mu Baishuang and several other martial immortals had gathered. Beside Mu Baishuang stood a cultivator with a cold face, phoenix eyes, and a long beard. He had an extraordinary bearing. He was Sword Venerable Ling Shao Sheng Jiuyuan, who had a good relationship with the World Sword sect. There were 2 other people beside him. One of them was a brawny man wearing a bronze dragon-patterned armor. He was dragon-suppressing Divine General Su Tianya. Beside him was a middle-aged man in a white scholar's robe. He was dressed like a teacher. He was Venerable Guyu Fang Baidu. When they learned that their descendants died in the Daluo Divine Palace, they were sad and angry, but more than that, they could not accept it. In fact, when their descendants were preparing to go to the Daluo Divine Palace, they were already mentally prepared. However, they could tolerate their descendants being killed by demonic ghosts due to their lack of strength, but they could not tolerate that they died in the hands of the same person, and that person was Chu Xiu. There was indeed an unspoken rule that Gu Zun could not intervene when a descendant of Gu Zun met with an accident during training. If it was just them, even Fang Baidu and Su Tianya had planned to swallow their anger. After all, Chu Xiu was not weak, and he had the support of the eastern region's great sect, the Imperial Sky Pavilion. However, when Shengzhou Yuan personally came to find them and said that the World Sword sect would be participating, they immediately nodded and agreed. Seeing that Mu Baishuang still had no intention of leaving, the slightly impatient Su Tianya could not help but frown. "Sword Venerable Mu, why aren't you leaving? Did the World Sword sect change its mind?" Mu Baishuang said indifferently, "The World Sword sect will not change its mind so easily. We are only waiting for one person. The people from the Sanskrit sect have agreed to come." Su Tianya could not help but sneer. "I think we shouldn't wait any longer. I'm afraid the people from the Sanskrit sect won't be coming. The Sanskrit sect has been suppressed by the Sky Treasure Temple to begin with, and their new hall master was killed by Chu Xiu in the Daluo Divine Palace. How could they possibly be distracted enough to send someone here?" As soon as he finished speaking, the void around him suddenly split open, and a twisted thread of laws surged toward him. Su Tianya's expression changed. With a raise of his hand, the surrounding void froze and turned into dragon scale-like shapes, imprisoning the threads within. However, the thread exuded an extremely powerful destructive power that could destroy everything. In an instant, the dragon scales were all torn apart, and it sliced toward his neck. Dragon roars erupted from Su Tianya's body as he tried to take it head-on. However, beside him, Fang Baidu's expression changed drastically. He formed a seal with his hands, and a white moonlight enveloped Su Tianya, immediately moving him dozens of feet away. The thread with the destructive power brushed past Su Tianya and easily broke through his dragon-shaped energy, leaving a bloody mark on his face. The pitch-black world-destroying fire bloomed, and a figure walked out of it. It turned out to be a tall and thin young man with eyes burning with world-destroying fire. He had a charming and enchanting appearance. That's right, he was charming and enchanting, and it was hard to tell whether he was a man or a woman. His voice was extremely androgynous, and it was impossible to tell whether he was a man or a woman. "Su Tianya, if you dare to spout nonsense and slander the Sanskrit sect again, I will send you to accompany that unlucky disciple of yours." Chapter 13-14. When that cultivator from the Sanskrit sect appeared, everyone was shocked. Even Mu Baishuang, who had always been calm, was shocked. Clearly, he didn't expect the Sanskrit sect to send him here. That person was Tuoluo, the vice-leader of the Sanskrit sect's Shiva Palace. He was a fifth-layer martial immortal. In the beginning, the Sanskrit sect didn't have a deputy temple master position. Usually, a temple master would pick a successor from the various palace masters to be groomed. When the temple master felt that his blood chi was getting weaker, he would help the new temple master take over. The Vishnu palace that Shingala was in was like that. However, the previous temple leader died in a hurry, so Tuoluo took over. Tuoluo was the successor to Shiva Palace. Originally, he should also be a palace master. However, because he was too powerful, so powerful that he once killed a seventh heaven martial immortal with a fifth heaven martial immortal, a palace master was clearly no longer enough to display his status. However, the previous temple leader wasn't old enough to retire, so the Sanskrit sect gave him the position of vice-leader. Tuoluo was powerful, and he was moody. His methods were strange and ruthless. He was very famous in the Daluotian. No one wanted to provoke such a monster, including Mu Baishuang. He even treated Tuoluo as a cultivator at the same level as him. Although martial immortal was divided into 9 layers, the first 3 layers could be reached by stabilizing one's realm and accumulating comprehension of laws. In other words, even if one didn't cultivate, they could reach the 3rd layer as long as they had enough time. As for the 4th, 5th, and 6th layers, they needed to have a certain level of control over the power of laws. As for the 7th, 8th, and 9th layers, they needed to have a certain level of control over the power of laws, the fusion of one's own power, divine abilities, battle prowess, and so on. No one would be surprised if Immortal killed a 6th-layer martial immortal as a 5th-layer martial immortal, but he killed a 7th-layer martial immortal. That was very shocking. After a while, Mu Baishuang said, "I didn't expect the Sanskrit sect to send you." Immortal said, "I didn't. I came on my own initiative." Mu Baishuang was puzzled. Why? Your Shiva palace is in charge of defending against the main attack of Tianluo Baishuang. Why did you waste your time coming to the east? Immortal's eyes flashed with a hint of confusion. I'm just curious. I'm very curious who killed Wuxia Xianxia. Hearing Immortal say this, Mu Baishuang and the others didn't ask anything else. Anyway, everyone knew that Immortal's mental state was clearly a little abnormal. Whatever he said, that was what it was. But Immortal didn't come here just because he was curious. Rather, it was because Wuxia Xianxia had previously told him that he had discovered a clue regarding the Mahakala deity palace, and it was on Chu Xiu. After that, Wuxia Xianxia entered the exalted divine palace and died there. Immortal wasn't interested in Wuxia Xianxia's death, and he wasn't interested in Chu Xiu either. What he was really interested in was the world extinction flame. Although his current cultivation was no weaker than that of the senior from the Shiva palace who had researched the world annihilation flame, the initial method of using the world annihilation flame was in the Mahakala divine palace. The group of people all had their own thoughts as they set off. Fang Baidu asked curiously, "Sword Exalt Mu, how do we get there?" Mu Baishuang pointed to the east and said, "Of course we go there like this. Haven't you been to the East Territory before?" Fang Baidu said, "Of course I have been to the East Territory, but are we just going to go there like this? Don't we need to take a detour or cover up?" Mu Baishuang said lightly, "We just want to move against Chu Xiu, not the High Heaven sect master. Why go through so much trouble?" Hearing Mu Baishuang say this, Fang Baidu was a little speechless. He had always heard that the cultivators of the world's sword sects acted in a straightforward manner, and he had finally witnessed it today. But it didn't matter. The combined strength of all of them was terrifying enough to even attack High Heaven sect. At this time, outside the southern barbarian border, Chu Xiu had already dispersed some of his people to prevent the power of a martial immortal from affecting them if they fought. Fang Yinglong and the others arrived 2 days after Chu Xiu's return, but when they saw what they had prepared, even Chu Xiu was surprised. No wonder the southern territories' combined strength was so much stronger than the east territories, but they did not attack High Heaven sect with great fanfare. It turned out that High Heaven sect had such a trump card. Unless they besieged Fang Yinglong in the Blessed Paradise like last time, the difficulty of killing Fang Yinglong in the Eastern Territory, especially in High Heaven sect, was no less than killing a peak 9th Heaven Master. Chu Xiu waited at the border for a few days before Mu Baishuang and the others appeared. But when they saw Chu Xiu openly waiting for them here, the expressions of Su Tianya and the others changed. They did not believe that this was a coincidence, and they all looked at Mu Baishuang. They had only talked about this matter in the sword sect of the world, so how did Chu Xiu know about it in advance? Mu Baishuang was very indifferent at this time. He frowned slightly and said, "It seems that there are still spies from other sects in my sword sect of the world. The purge 10 years ago did not get rid of all those people. You know the purpose of our visit today, but you still stay here. You must have something to rely on, right?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "You used such a big force to find trouble with me. If I am not prepared, wouldn't I be courting death?" Fang Yinglong and the others did not hide. As soon as Chu Xiu's voice fell, they also walked out from behind Chu Xiu. Mu Baishuang frowned slightly. This group of people in the Eastern Territory was quite united. He had heard that there was some conflict between Chu Xiu and High Heaven sect before, but he did not expect that they would actually take action for Chu Xiu now. Su Tianya said hatefully, "You from High Heaven sect, we are not here for the Eastern Territory, so why bother stopping us? Chu Xiu killed a disciple of our faction in the Great Luo Divine Palace. We are just here to settle our personal grievances and seek justice. Fang Yinglong said lightly, my High Heaven sect owes Chu Xiu a favor. No matter what, this favor must be repaid. Stopping you is the same as returning the favor. Chu Xiu showed a sarcastic smile, you ancient sovereigns really can't afford to play around. Fighting in the Great Luo Divine Palace is a matter of life and death. What's more, they are all descendants of the ancient sovereigns. But now that they are dead, you come to find trouble with me. Do you think the rules of the ancient sovereigns are nothing but farts? Su Tianya glared at Chu Xiu, your disciple is dead, so what rules do you care about? Chu Xiu, the subduing dragon divine general's bloodline will not rest until you are dead. On the side, Fang Baidu pulled him aside and said in a deep voice, rules are for the living, not for the dead. Who said that we attacked today to avenge our disciple? We only came at the invitation of the World Sword Sect, is that not enough? Su Tianya was an impulsive person, and once he was angry, he would not care about anything else. However, Fang Baidu still knew his limits. Their actions today had indeed violated the rules of the ancient sovereigns. Although no one would come to find trouble with them, it would not be pleasant to say the least. Chu Xiu shook his head and looked at Fang Yinglong, Sect Master Fang, with so many martial immortal realm masters acting shamelessly together, I have no choice but to leave this matter to you. Fang Yinglong nodded and said in a deep voice, everyone, I will now give you one last chance to leave the Eastern Territory. Otherwise, you may not have the chance to even if you want to. Mu Baishuang raised his eyebrows and said, oh. I would like to give it a try. With that, Mu Baishuang, Yin Tuoluo, and Sword Exalted Ling Tian, Shengjiu Yuan, stood out together. Two 7th-level martial immortals, plus Yin Tuoluo, who had the strength to kill 7th-level martial immortals, were not afraid of Fang Yinglong, who was only an 8th-level martial immortal. However, at that moment, Fang Yinglong, Qin Baiyuan, and Linghu Immortal Mountain all formed hand seals. In an instant, like an earth dragon turning over, the entire southern barbaric land trembled. Feeling the powerful tremor, the expressions of Mu Baishuang and the others changed. What could cause such a huge tremor? Could it be that a peak expert of the 9th heaven martial immortal realm had appeared in the High Heaven sect? Before they could react, the ground in front of them had already been torn apart. A seal of several thousand feet, like a small mountain, abruptly emerged from the ground. The seal was incomparably white, as if it was made of white jade. Countless dragon patterns and various runes were engraved on it, shining brightly. Most importantly, the power of the seal itself was a type of world energy. It represented the eastern region's world energy, and was the great power gathered by the dragon vein. Even Chu Xiu was shocked when he saw it. He knew about it before, but he didn't expect the seal to be so big. However, the moment he saw it, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. The rootless sacred flame of their Kunlun devil cult was actually the same kind of existence as the soaring sky seal. They were both rare treasures left behind after the laws of the world had been materialized. However, the soaring sky seal had been refined by the founder of the High Heaven sect, so it could be used at will. However, apart from Wei Shuya, who could temporarily activate the rootless sacred flame with the power of the same origin, no one else could use it. In that case, could he think of a way to use the rootless sacred flame to refine something like the Lingshao Wuji seal? The reason why Chu Xiu was daydreaming was because he was not worried that Fang Yinglong and the others would not be able to stop it. Since Fang Yinglong had promised him, the other party must be confident of winning. Sure enough, when the soaring sky seal appeared, the faces of Mu Baishuang and Yin Tuoluo turned solemn. They were all cultivators from top sects, and they knew how powerful this kind of supreme treasure refined from a divine object was. It was definitely an existence that could suppress an entire sect. On top of the soaring heavens Wuji seal, the 5 of them were imprisoned on the spot. It was as if the ground was shackling them. A loud explosion sounded out. Mu Baishuang and the other two used all their strength to block the soaring sky Wuji seal. Mu Baishuang shouted at Su Tianya and Fang Baidu, "Why aren't you two helping? What are you waiting for?" Chapter 13-15. Mu Baishuang and the others could not stop it, even if Su Tianya and Fang Baidu joined forces. Su Tianya's physical strength was shocking. As he performed the secret skill of dragon transformation, he turned into a giant dragon that was hundreds of feet long and tried to lift the soaring sky Wuji seal. However, he ended up vomiting blood because of the power of the seal. This seal, which looked like a hill, was actually part of the power of the dragon vein in the entire Eastern Territory. Even if a martial immortal could control the principles, it was impossible to destroy a part of the Eastern Territory. The five of them worked together, but they were still pressed down by the soaring sky and infinite seal. The ground beneath their feet cracked inch by inch, and they were unable to escape. At this time, Fang Yinglong looked at Mu Baishuang with murderous intent. He exchanged a glance with Qin Baiyuan and Immortal Linghu. The two of them also understood Fang Yinglong's meaning and nodded. Fang Yinglong wanted to kill Mu Baishuang. In fact, this was the first time Fang Yinglong had used the soaring heaven seal. No one had attacked High Heaven sect for so many years, so there was naturally no opportunity to use this supreme treasure. But when he used it this time, Fang Yinglong found that the power of the soaring heaven seal was somewhat beyond his imagination. Previously, Mu Baishuang had joined forces with the Southern Territory to kill him in the Blessed Paradise. His intentions were clear. Since he had the opportunity now, why couldn't he kill Mu Baishuang and make the world's sword sect have one less sword saint? Fang Yinglong was also a ruthless person who acted decisively. Since the two sides had already fallen out and a battle was inevitable, he would kill as many as he could now. The three of them looked at each other and pushed the power of the Ling Shao Wuji seal to its maximum level. In an instant, the earth shook and the mountains shook. The ground under their feet had already cracked and half of their bodies had sunk into the ground. At this time, Chu Xiu's eyes also flashed with murderous intent. In any case, there was already a death feud between them. If he did not kill them now, it would be even more troublesome. However, he was not from High Heaven sect, so he could not control the soaring heaven seal or even enter the range of the seal. He could only prepare for a sneak attack from the side. Sensing the killing intent coming from Chu Xiu, Yin Tuoluo suddenly said, "Everyone, help me hold them off for a while. Fang Baidu, use your Guyu bloodline secret art to send me out to kill Chu Xiu." Su Tianya forced himself to say, "Why are we the ones carrying this thing and not you?" Yin Tuoluo said indifferently, "My strength isn't as great as yours. Letting me carry this fellow is purely a waste." Carrying the soaring Shao Wuji seal required immense power. Although Yin Tuoluo had the achievement of killing 7th-level martial immortals, he was not a true 7th-level martial immortal. In terms of power, he was truly inferior to Su Tianya, who had a powerful physical body. Hearing this, Su Tianya could only snort coldly and say, "Hurry up, we can't hold on for much longer." Although they were working together now, Su Tianya had not forgotten the scar that Yin Tuoluo had left on his face previously. Seeing that everyone agreed, Fang Baidu immediately formed hand seals. Moonlight enveloped Yin Tuoluo's body and transported him out of the range of the soaring Shao Wuji seal. However, as Yin Tuoluo left, the bodies of Su Tianya and the others immediately sank, and the pressure on them increased greatly. In the next moment, Yin Tuoluo's figure turned into a black mist and instantly appeared before Chu Xiu. Just as Chu Xiu was about to attack, Yin Tuoluo's voice suddenly reached Chu Xiu's ears. "Tell me where the people of Mahakala Deity Palace are, and I will immediately retreat and help you kill Mu Baishuang and the others. I swear by the great god Shiva, I am not deceiving you." Chu Xiu was slightly taken aback and transmitted his voice, "Aren't you working together with Mu Baishuang and the others? Also, I killed Xan Jialua." Even if you swear by the three gods of Sanskrit, I won't believe you. Tuoluo said indifferently, I can't betray you just because I'm working together. Their value is not comparable to Mahakala deity palace. As for Xianxia, who told you that I have to avenge him? He is the lord of Vishnu palace, and I am from Shiva palace. Unless the sect leader wants me to kill you, I have no interest in avenging him. The belief of us Sanskrit martial artists towards the three natal gods is branded in our minds, so you don't have to worry that I will lie to you. Chu Xiu shrugged and said, unfortunately, I don't believe you, and even if I believe you, I don't want to say it. There were many people who had seen him use the world-extinguishing flame, and Xianxia had already confirmed that he was related to Mahakala deity palace, so he did not think of hiding it. Therefore, the enmity between him and Sanskrit was already destined to be irreconcilable. Even if Tuoluo did not come to find trouble with him, when the battle between Sanskrit and Tianluo treasure temple was over, there would be other people who would come to find trouble with him. Therefore, Tuoluo's promise was not very useful to Chu Xiu. Tuoluo was not angry, he just laughed and said, Xianxia is right, you are a stubborn person, like those bald donkeys of Tianluo treasure temple, stubborn and unyielding. But it doesn't matter, I can even break the golden iron heads of those bald donkeys, I don't believe that your head is harder than theirs. Chu Xiu snorted coldly, vulgar words, who are you calling bald donkeys? As Chu Xiu's voice fell, his left hand formed a seal, and the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet on his right hand shone brightly. The 6 paths of heaven and earth, the rules of life and death transformed into a huge wheel and descended. In the hell path, endless flames surged, wrapping around Tuoluo's body. The animal path absorbed the heaven and earth essence chi, transforming into countless ferocious beasts that bit towards Tuoluo. The Azura path transformed into murderous aura, transforming into countless murderous weapons that slashed down. In the hungry ghost path, all kinds of strange-looking hungry ghosts pounced towards Tuoluo, tearing at his primordial spirit. The celestial path's divine might was vast, the golden Buddha figure towered between heaven and earth, and the divine seal crashed down. The mortal path's power was the strangest, a misty aura erupted, strangling all power. These 6 paths rotated, and they were incomparably real, every strike seemed to make Tuoluo fall into the real 6 paths of reincarnation, his body and mind suffering double torture. True and false, reality and illusion, recreating reincarnation, this was Chu Xiu's 6 paths of Saha splendor wheel. When Chu Xiu studied this technique, he was still a little humble and underestimated its power. At that time, Chu Xiu had thought that this technique was not inferior to Jun Wuxian's 6 paths of pagoda disillusionment brilliance wheel. However, from the looks of it now, it was even better than Jun Wuxian's 6 paths of pagoda disillusionment brilliance wheel. This was the first time this technique was used among the Daoist, and even though Tuoluo was strong, he was still caught off guard. The 6 paths of reincarnation and rebirth scripture was a cultivation method that no one in the heavenly Luo temple cultivated. In fact, 10,000 years ago in the lower realm, the heavenly Luo temple's martial artists had already given up on this cultivation method because some parts of it were too evil and did not conform to the heavenly Luo temple's cultivation method. Tuoluo had fought with the heavenly Luo temple all his life, and he almost recognized all the techniques of the heavenly Luo temple, but this was the first time he saw a technique with the 6 paths of reincarnation as its core. But even though he did not understand it, he could tell at a glance that the core of the other's technique was definitely from the heavenly Luo temple's lineage. Extreme world annihilation fire bloomed around Tuoluo's body, breaking free from the strangulation of the 6 paths of reincarnation. The fire was incomparably black, black to the extent that when it burned, it swallowed the surrounding light. Chu Xiu had also cultivated the world annihilation fire, but Tuoluo's world annihilation fire had already gone down a different path from the world annihilation fire that he had cultivated. Chu Xiu's world annihilation fire was closer to the original version of the great Mahakala deity palace's world annihilation fire. World annihilation fire and creation fire, destruction and rebirth, all in a single thought. Hope could be born in the fire, but it could also destroy everything. All things were reincarnation. But Yin Tuoluo's world annihilation fire was extreme to the extreme, swallowing all power. To be more precise, it was no longer swallowing, but simply erasing. Under the burning of the world annihilation fire, all power was erased as if it had never existed. But this power was not absolute. At least, in the continuous rotation of the 6 paths of reincarnation, the primal chaos fog produced by the human realm had always imprisoned Yin Tuoluo in a space, making it impossible for him to break free. Even if the world annihilation fire erased him, it would immediately replenish his power. Yin Tuoluo snorted coldly and said, "When it comes to the 6 paths of reincarnation, you still say that you are not like those bald donkeys? But you want to trap me with just this bit of power?" Yin Tuoluo's body began to melt strangely, as if the world annihilation fire had begun to backfire, melting his entire body. But Chu Xiu could clearly feel that Yin Tuoluo was indeed melting, but not because of the backfire, but because he had integrated into the laws of this world. After Yin Tuoluo's body completely disappeared, Chu Xiu immediately put away the 6 paths Saha wheel. Golden Sanskrit and monstrous demonic chi battle armor appeared around him, and powerful power instantly spread around him. At the same time, Yin Tuoluo's body also strangely appeared in mid-air, without any warning, like a sudden breeze. The endless world annihilation fire turned into threads and coiled around Chu Xiu's invincible holy demon body, immediately giving off a series of ear-piercing explosions. The combination of Buddha and demon, the rotation of yin and yang. The invincible holy demon body that Chu Xiu had deduced was a combination of the invincible golden body and the 9 heavens demonic golden body, the 2 strongest body-refining techniques. No matter how overbearing Yin Tuoluo's world annihilation fire was, it could not break it in an instant. In the next moment, Chu Xiu's body instantly grew by hundreds of feet, turning into an ancient demon god that roared. After using the law phenomenon of heaven and earth, for some reason, it resonated with the Ling Shao Wu Ji seal, causing the Ling Shao Wu Ji seal to erupt with a dazzling golden light, and its power increased by 30%. With a punch, the world annihilation fire in front of Yin Tuoluo exploded. Although he blocked the punch, he was also sent flying by the punch. Chu Xiu looked up at his fist. The law phenomenon of heaven and earth had actually been corroded by the other party's world annihilation fire. It was enough to show that the other party had even cultivated the world annihilation fire to the extent that it could devour the power of rules. But in the next moment, the majestic energy immediately filled up the corroded body, and it fell again, crashing towards Yin Tuoluo like a mountain. Just now, when Yin Tuoluo had taken the law phenomenon of heaven and earth's attack head-on, he already knew how powerful the other party's divine power was. Seeing that the mountain-sized fist was crashing down, he could only fuse the world annihilation fire into the power of rules and hide within it to dodge. When Mu Baishuang, who was bitterly resisting the Ling Shao Wu Ji seal, saw this, he could not help but shake his head gently. They had lost this time. Chapter 13-16. What surprised Mu Baishuang and the others the most this time was not High Heaven Sect's intervention, but rather Chu Xiu's strength. Yin Tuoluo was 2 celestial layers higher than Chu Xiu, and he had the battle record of killing a 7th celestial layer martial artist. In the end, when facing Chu Xiu, he was actually at a disadvantage. How could he still fight? Even if they died, they would not be able to win. So, Mu Baishuang made a prompt decision. The next moment, the long sword in his hand suddenly burst with a blood-colored light. Endless blood chi poured into the long sword, shattering its sword spirit and turning into countless sword shadows that tore through the sky. Finally, it broke through the shackles of the soaring heaven seal. Run! With a single word, everyone took advantage of the countless sword shadows to escape from the range of the soaring heaven seal, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Tuoluo also emerged from the void and took a deep look at Chu Xiu before his figure turned into a black mist and flew away. By the time Fang Yinglong and the others tore the sword shadows apart, Mu Baishuang and the others, who were at the martial immortal level, had already disappeared. Fang Yinglong and the others gasped at the same time and pressed the soaring heaven seal back into the ground. This kind of powerful natural treasure, even if it had been refined by their ancestral master, was still extremely difficult for them to operate. Fang Yinglong sneered. Mu Baishuang shattered his sword spirit. I estimate that he won't be able to recover without some time. The World Sword sect should behave for a while this time. After saying that, Fang Yinglong and the others all looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. Although they were operating the soaring heaven seal just now, they had been observing Chu Xiu. The Daoist Divine Palace was indeed a magical place. Stepping into the martial immortal realm in one step and crossing the heavens and man boundary, it could be said to be the fastest place to increase one's strength. But Chu Xiu's strength was not only rising quickly, it was also a bit abnormal. In particular, in the two moves he exchanged with Tuoluo just now, Tuoluo, who was famous in the Western domain, was at a disadvantage. Chu Xiu cupped his fists to Fang Yinglong and the others. Thank you, Sect Master Fang, for your help. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't have gotten through this trouble so easily. Fang Yinglong waved his hand and said, I, Fang Yinglong, will not go back on my words. When Chu saved me, it was much more dangerous than this. But Chu. Fang Yinglong wanted to persuade Chu Xiu to leave a way out next time, but when he thought of Chu Xiu's character, he didn't continue to persuade him. In fact, Yinglong also wanted to persuade him, but thinking about Chu Xiu, he didn't continue. Ling 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 layer, Chu Xiu Chen Xing Saint. If he tried to persuade Chu Xiu now, it would seem a little hypocritical. Therefore, Fang Yinglong directly said, Chu, we came out with the sect's treasures. We can't be away for too long, so we'll be going back first. Be careful, and take care of yourself. Chu Xiu nodded and said, Take care, sect leader Fang. Just after Fang Yinglong and the others left, Mu Baishuang and the others finally stopped at a place dozens of miles away from the southern barbaric land, but they all looked extremely embarrassed. Su Tianya glared at Tuoluo and said angrily, What did you say before? We will help you deal with the Ling Shao Wu Ji seal, while you go kill Chu Xiu. In the end, you went to kill Chu Xiu, who was weaker than you, and even got suppressed by him. Before Su Tianya could finish his words, the boundless world extinguishing flames engulfed him. This time, Su Tianya reacted. He turned into a dragon, dodged to the side, and shouted angrily, Tuoluo, what do you mean? Tuoluo's face was cold, and he said, Su Tianya, watch your words. Don't forget who you're talking to. You're not old yet. If you take another disciple, he can inherit your divine dragon general bloodline. But if you dare to talk nonsense again, believe it or not, I'll really exterminate your bloodline. Fang Baidu hurriedly cupped his hands and said, Hall Master Tuoluo, please don't take offense. Brother Su has such a character. He doesn't mean any harm. Fang Baidu and Su Tianya had known each other since they were young. He knew each other's temperament. Even after stepping into the martial immortal realm, he didn't restrain himself. Instead, he became more and more fierce. If the two of them joined forces, it wouldn't be easy for a level 7 martial immortal to kill them. But the problem was that Su Tianya had the Sanskrit sect behind him. Provoking the hall master of the Sanskrit sect wasn't something that could be settled so easily. Mu Baishuang's face was a bit pale. Hearing that, he said indifferently, Don't blame Hall Master Tuoluo for this. We know too little about Chu Xiu. Hall Master Tuoluo's cultivation technique is strange and unpredictable. It's suitable for unorthodox attacks. With the world annihilation fire, even a level 7 martial immortal can't take it head-on. But Chu Xiu's cultivation technique is extremely fierce and violent. His body-tempering secret technique is comparable to the heavenly treasure Buddha's indestructible golden body. He also has a strength-type divine power, which happens to restrain Hall Master Yin Tuoluo. That's why he became like this. Mu Baishuang said something fair. Yin Tuoluo didn't underestimate his enemy, but he didn't understand Chu Xiu at all. Moreover, they really didn't have time to continue fighting, so they waited for Yin Tuoluo to understand. By the way, the three of you are Gu Zun's successors. Can't you tell which faction Chu Xiu comes from? Mu Baishuang suddenly asked. Hearing Mu Baishuang's question, Su Tianya and the others were taken aback. Only then did they realize what they had been neglecting, Chu Xiu's identity. Because Chu Xiu's actions didn't seem like a Gu Zun's successor. He always liked to hang out with people from the Jianghu, and his methods were far different from the Gu Zun's successor who acted alone. Most importantly, even they couldn't tell who Chu Xiu's master was from his cultivation technique. Su Tianya looked at Sheng Jiuyuan and said, "Brother Sheng, your sword Venerable Ling Tian's lineage has a longer history than ours. As early as 10,000 years ago in the lower realm, you were already a famous great-grandmaster of the sword. Can you tell who Chu Xiu is from his cultivation technique?" Sheng Jiuyuan shook his head and said, "I can't. This kid cultivates Taoism, Buddhism, and demonic at the same time. It seems to be the routine of the school of miscellany. Most cultivators who are independent cultivators would only cultivate like this when they are hungry. However, there are far too few who can reach the martial immortal realm and cross the boundary between heaven and man. Even if there are, they can't even compare to Chu Xiu, let alone his master." Su Tianya frowned and said, "That's strange. Could it be that this Chu Xiu popped out from a crack in a rock?" Fang Baidu said, 10,000 years ago, when our ancestral master came to the Daoist, there were also many masters who cultivated in seclusion in the lower realm who came to the Daoist. At that time, there were too many people, and it was impossible to count. Perhaps Chu Xiu's ancestral master was one of these people, and he has been cultivating in seclusion since he came to the Daoist. Everyone was guessing, but they had no clue. At this time, Mu Baishuang suddenly realized that Yin Tuoluo had disappeared without them noticing. He should have rushed back to the Sanskrit sect. Mu Baishuang also said to the others, "In that case, we will take our leave first. This time, the plan has failed, and we can't touch Chu Xiu for the time being. At least in the Eastern Territory, under the protection of High Heaven sect, if you want to touch Chu Xiu, you have to weigh the weight of High Heaven sect." With that, Mu Baishuang and Sheng Jiuyuan rushed to the World Sword sect. Sheng Jiuyuan had a good relationship with the World Sword sect. Every once in a while, Sheng Jiuyuan would come to the World Sword sect to exchange sword Dao with the sword seniors of the World Sword sect, and also give pointers to the disciples of the World Sword sect. At this time, his disciple had just died, and he was in a bad mood, so he came to the World Sword sect to stay for a while. Su Tianya and Fang Baidu looked at each other and had no choice but to leave. Without everyone's help, they didn't dare to find trouble with Chu Xiu alone. In Sangnan Mansion, Lu Jiang saw that Chu Xiu had returned so soon, and he couldn't help asking in surprise, "Didn't you say that many martial immortals came to find trouble with you? Those guys can't be so weak, right? Did they cower when they saw High Heaven sect attack?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "After a fight, they found out that they couldn't do anything to me, so they retreated. Those people are not idiots. Even if they knew they couldn't kill me, they still insisted on fighting to the death. However, High Heaven sect's trump card is really terrifying. Even if they don't have a ninth heaven martial immortal expert, they still can't be underestimated. Sects that truly stood at the peak of the Daoist all had a ninth heaven martial immortal expert, but High Heaven sect didn't have one in this generation. However, with the power of the soaring heaven seal, High Heaven sect wouldn't be so easy to break. You and Qinglian take care of the Daoist side for the time being. I'm going to the lower realm. Lu Jiang, he said in surprise, the heavenly gate has been destroyed, and the other sects have all behaved themselves. Why are you going to the lower realm? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, I'm going to find a few helpers to deal with the Daoist troubles. Back in the Daoist Divine Palace, when Chu Xiu started killing people, he was already mentally prepared. There would definitely be a lot of trouble in the future. Although the Daoist Divine Palace was filled with people fighting and killing each other, every time the Daoist Divine Palace ended, there would always be people taking the opportunity to settle all kinds of grievances, not to mention that Chu Xiu had killed even more people. So, when Chu Xiu went to the lower realm to attack the heavenly gate, he had already been thinking about this matter, but he didn't expect the other party to come so quickly. After giving some instructions to Lu Jianghe and Mei Qinglian, Chu Xiu went straight back to the lower realm and went to moon-worshipping religion of West Chu. After the Battle of Heavenly Gate, the Yuan Qi in the lower realm began to spread on a large scale with the Heavenly Gate as the center. Almost every day, people felt the Yuan Qi skyrocket. So, when Chu Xiu came to moon-worshipping religion, most of the leaders of moon-worshipping religion were in retreat. Yi Shaonan was in retreat to digest the insights he had gained from the battle with Jun Wuxian, and the 9 divine Magispriests were also in retreat to seek a breakthrough. Only an older high priest, who had no hope of reaching the martial immortal realm in this lifetime, did not go into retreat and came out to greet Chu Xiu. The high priest of moon-worshipping religion bowed respectfully to Chu Xiu and asked, May I know why official Chu has come to my moon-worshipping religion? The sect leader is currently in retreat, do you need me to inform him? Since the Battle of Heavenly Gate, Wind-Sweeping Tower had re-ranked the sovereign list. Chu Xiu was ranked 3rd, behind Zhong Shenxiu. Under the premise that Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had become legends and Zhong Shenxiu appeared and disappeared unpredictably, Chu Xiu was the #1 sovereign powerhouse in the current Jianghu. The high priest of moon-worshipping religion had no choice but to respect him. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, No need, I'm here to see the saintess of moon-worshipping religion. Chapter 13-17. Chu Xiu's sudden visit to the moon-worshipping cult's holy maiden puzzled the high priest. After all, with Chu Xiu's current strength and status, he no longer needed to deal with warriors at the level of the moon-worshipping cult's holy maiden. However, since Chu Xiu said so, the high priest still called the moon-worshipping church's saintess over. The holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult was wearing a colorful short skirt that was unique to Miaojiang. Her hair was adorned with all kinds of silver ornaments. She did not have the seductive and evil feeling of the devil cult's holy maiden. Instead, she gave off a lively feeling. However, when she saw Chu Xiu, the holy maiden smiled charmingly. Cult Master Chu, why are you looking for me? My life was saved by you, Cult Master Chu. I will do whatever Cult Master Chu wants me to do. Chu Xiu was unmoved. He just asked the high priest, I want to take your holy maiden away. Do I need to tell Cult Master Yi? Before the high priest could answer, the holy maiden waved her hand and said, No need. My status in the moon-worshipping cult is second only to the cult master. I still have this power. The cult master is in seclusion, so don't disturb him. Chu Xiu nodded. Okay, let's go. With that, Chu Xiu left with the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping church. The moon-worshipping church's holy maiden turned around and playfully waved at the moon-worshipping church's high priest. Then, she skipped after Chu Xiu and left. The high priest shook his head helplessly. In fact, it was somewhat against the rules for the holy maiden to leave just like that. However, he had watched the moon-worshipping sect saintess grow up. Like him, she was also from Miaojiang, so he treated the moon-worshipping sect saintess like his own daughter. However, when he thought about her identity, the high priest felt a little heartache. She might have less lifespan than an old man like him. Let her do whatever she wants. Moreover, the high priest of the moon-worshipping cult was not worried that Chu Xiu would have any evil intentions. Chu Xiu was strong, but the moon-worshipping church was not a pushover. Moreover, if Chu Xiu really had evil intentions towards the moon-worshipping church, then when Yi Xiaonan was seriously injured in the Elysium, Chu Xiu could have already taken action. Outside the moon-worshipping cult, Chu Xiu asked the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult, "You still don't know what I want you to do, and you agree to go with me?" The Holy Virgin of the moon-worshipping cult shook her head indifferently. "Anyway, you saved my life. Even if you really want me to die, I've lived for so long. It's worth it." However, the Holy Maiden of the moon-worshipping cult then said with a smile, "But I believe that leader Chu will not harm me, right?" Chu Xiu said, "It's a little dangerous, but I believe that with your ability, it shouldn't be a problem. By the way, I still don't know your name." It should be said that it was not only Chu Xiu who did not know, but the entire underworld did not know the name of the Holy Virgin of the moon-worshipping cult. From the day she stepped into the underworld, the Holy Virgin of the moon-worshipping cult was her code name, her name, everything about her. Even within the moon-worshipping cult, whether it was other disciples or Donghuang Tai and the others, they all called her the Holy Virgin. So now that Chu Xiu asked this question, even the Holy Virgin of the moon-worshipping cult was stunned. She froze for a moment before saying, "My name is Long Longer." After the Holy Virgin of the moon-worshipping cult finished speaking, Chu Xiu was also stunned. He did not expect that the Holy Virgin of the moon-worshipping cult would be called Long Longer. Seeing Chu Xiu's expression, Long Longer could not help but pout and said with dissatisfaction, "Why, is it strange that I have this name? Long is the surname of the Miao tribe. I was born with sharp eyes and eyebrows, so what's wrong with calling me Long Longer?" Chu Xiu coughed and said, "It's nothing. By the way, you should know the effect of the longevity goo. Your talent is not weak, and you can reach the heaven and earth mystic connecting realm by your own cultivation. Why do you need to feed the longevity goo with your blood essence and lifespan?" Long Longer paused and said lightly, "There are many things in this world that you can't do even if you want to. There are many helpless things in the world, and I am just one of them. I joined the moon-worshipping cult at the age of 7. Before joining the moon-worshipping cult, my parents were killed by mountain bandits. I want revenge, so I need strength and status. But Miao Territory's Gu technique is not a quick method, and my talent is not amazing enough to be the best in the entire moon-worshipping cult at such a young age. The huge moon-worshipping cult will not help me take revenge for a low-level disciple who has just entered. So competing for the saintess and feeding the longevity goo with my blood is a very good choice. Fortunately, I succeeded and became the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult. Although my strength is not enough, I have a status comparable to the 9 great magi priests, and I can command many moon-worshipping cult disciples to help me take revenge. Do you regret it now?" Long Longer shook her head and said, "I don't regret it, because my heart was filled with hatred at that time, and there was no other choice. After taking revenge, even if I knew that I have the longevity goo and can reach the mystic connecting realm in one step, I still desperately cultivated. Not because I am persistent in martial arts, but because I don't want to be as helpless as I was when I was young. I don't want to be able to control my own fate, I just want to have the opportunity to choose my fate in the future." Chu Xiu looked at Long Longer in surprise. She was very open-minded, even more open-minded than many of the older generation martial artists. Mental state has nothing to do with strength or age, and nowadays, there are many people who are regressing as they live. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "But you still have a chance. Although I don't know the strength of the first-generation saintess of the moon-worshipping cult, she is at most a half-step martial immortal, not a true martial immortal. So, as long as you can step into the martial immortal realm in the future, you can use the power of rules to cleanse your body, and you will naturally be able to get rid of the longevity goo's imprint and gain a portion of your lifespan." Long Longer smiled and said, "Thank you, Cult Master Chu, for your auspicious words. If it was anyone else, I would definitely not believe it, but if it was you, Cult Master Chu, I would definitely believe it." "Oh, right, where are we going?" After leaving the moon-worshipping cult, Chu Xiu had been leading her west, but not in the direction of Kunlun Mountain, but the Western Desert. Chu Xiu said indifferently, Western Desert Sword King City, to see an old friend, and to tell you what you are going to do. Western Desert, on top of the Sword King City's city wall, Fang Qi Shao was holding a sword, leaning against the city's flag, and sipping on a bottle of wine. Boring. This is so fucking boring. When will these days come to an end? Fang Qi Shao looked very dispirited. His hair was unkempt, and there were 2 big bags under his eyes, as if he had been ravaged by someone. Even his favorite wine, the 9-brewed wine presented by the tribes of the small countries in the western region, was tasteless to him. Brother Fang, were you punished by sect Master Shen again? 7th young Master Fang was stunned when he heard that voice. Then, he crawled to his feet with a grunt and looked at Chu Xiu and Long Ling, who were standing on the city wall, with pleasant surprise. Brother Chu. Official Chu. Cult Master Chu. Are you here to save me from the abyss of suffering? Hurry up and take me away. If you show up, I guarantee that the sect master won't even dare to fart. 7th young Master Fang's expression was a little agitated as he rambled on. Only then did he notice Long Ling, who was beside Chu Xiu. He scratched his head and gave a confident smile. Miss, you look very familiar. I'm Fang Qi Shao. Miss, you must have heard of me, I wonder. Before he could finish speaking, a 3-headed snake popped out from Long Linger's snow-white shoulder, staring at him like a tiger watching its prey. 3-headed gold-swallowing snake. You are the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult. Fang Qi Shao was shocked and quickly jumped to the side. He had interacted with Long Linger before and had met her a few times. But at that time, Long Longer was dressed in white and wore a veil. Now that she had changed her clothes, Fang Qi Shao couldn't recognize her. Chu Xiu coughed and said, Brother Fang, what's wrong? Fang Qi Shao sighed and said, Don't mention it. The sect master wants to hand over the position of Sword King City Lord to me. That's a good thing. The sect master of Sword King City, Fang Qi Shao, will definitely be more domineering than the Sword Chief, Fang Qi Shao. 7th young Master Fang said with a face full of resentment, Good things? The sect master said that I'm strong enough, but before I can take over Sword King City, I need to have the ability to be the sect master. That's why I've been learning how to be a sect master from the sect master. I've been dealing with the messy affairs of the small countries and tribes in the western regions. I also have to pay attention to the various movements in the Jianghu, as well as the F*King matters in the sect, and so on. My head is about to explode. At this time, a voice was heard. B****. These are the basic requirements of a sect master. How can you be a sect master if you don't know anything? Heavenly King Shen walked up and bowed respectfully to Chu Xiu. Greetings, Cult Master Chu. I didn't know Cult Master Chu was coming. Please forgive me for not going out to greet you. At this time, Heavenly King Shen didn't dare to be disrespectful to Chu Xiu. It should be said that in the whole Jianghu, except for the old Heavenly Master and Yi Shaonan, no one dared to be disrespectful to Chu Xiu. Of course, Lu Chonglu could do the same, but he didn't know that. Heavenly King Shen thought about how he had stopped Fang Qi Shao from interacting with Chu Xiu. Now that he thought about it, Heavenly King Shen only felt that he was very lucky. He was glad that he didn't go too far back then. Now that Chu Xiu had dominated the Jianghu, if Sword King City encountered any danger in the future, as long as Fang Qi Shao asked, Chu Xiu would definitely help. Just like the Mo family of Shenyang. Although they weren't very powerful, everyone knew that their family head, Mo Tianlin, was a good friend of Chu Xiu in the past. Therefore, even the Shangshuaying family, the leader of the 9 aristocratic families, had to be very polite to them. Their karmic relationship with the cult master Chu Xiu was a great opportunity that they couldn't even beg for. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, Sect Master Shen, you don't have to be so polite. I'm actually here to borrow someone from you. Heavenly King Shen immediately said, who does Cult Master Chu want to borrow? Just say it. Chu Xiu pointed at Fang Qi Xiao and said, it's Brother Fang. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Fang Qi Xiao's face immediately revealed a look of ecstasy. He thought to himself, Brother Chu really knows me. However, Heavenly King Shen's face revealed a troubled expression. Chapter 13:18. Hearing that Chu Xiu wanted to borrow Fang Qi Xiao for a while, Heavenly King Shen was put in a difficult position. If it was anything else, Heavenly King Shen would definitely not hesitate. But Fang Qi Xiao was the future heir of Sword King City. If Fang Qi Xiao worked a little harder, he would already be the heir. Heavenly King Shen did not want anything to happen to Fang Qi Xiao. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, Sect Master Shen, don't worry. Let's find a quiet place to talk. After Heavenly King Shen brought Chu Xiu to a secret room, Chu Xiu took out the sword soul he had found in the storm sword mound. Although Heavenly King Shen did not know what it was, he could feel that it contained a shocking sword intent. Chu Xiu said, you all know that Yan Ji has entered the martial immortal stage. But in reality, Yan Ji is not a real martial immortal. To be more precise, he is a fake martial immortal. I found this sword soul in the storm sword mound. As long as you nourish it with the sword spirit's sword chi for 1,000 years and strengthen it, you can enter the martial immortal stage after refining it. Then, you can use the sword soul to control the nomological power. Of course, normal people can't wait that long. But now, as long as Brother Fang refines it, you can immediately enter the mystic enlightening stage. Your understanding of Sword Dao will also increase greatly. Fang Qi Xiao's eyes lit up. Good stuff. Brother Chu, you're really a good friend. You didn't have to bring anything when you came here. But since you're so generous, I won't stand on ceremony. Shut up. Heavenly King Shen scolded Fang Qi Xiao angrily. Then, he carefully said to Chu Xiu, may I ask what Cult Master Chu wants 7th Young Master to do? Heavenly King Shen was a veteran in the pugilistic world. He was a utilitarian. Anyway, in his opinion, since Chu Xiu had given Fang Qi Xiao such an expensive item, the task he was assigned to do must be extremely dangerous. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Sect Leader Shen, don't worry. Brother Fang is a good friend of mine for so many years. Of course, I won't harm him. I just want him to do me a favor. How much does Sect Leader Shen know about the Daoist people? Heavenly King Shen was puzzled. The Daoist that people from the lower realm went to 10,000 years ago? Everything I know is from the information you spread, Cult Master Chu. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and told Heavenly King Shen about his experiences in the Daoist. At the same time, he wanted to tell Fang Qi Xiao and Long Longer. After listening to him, everyone's jaws dropped. Their faces were filled with shock. After that, Chu Xiu said in a low voice, the people I offended in the Daoist may not be as strong as me. But if they work together, it will be very troublesome. The reason I came to look for the Holy Lady and Brother Fang is very simple. Didn't I kill their disciple? Fine, I'll return one of their disciples now. Simply put, I'm looking for you to be spies. To Chu Xiu, there was actually no need to hide these things. Cracks had already appeared on the Heavenly Gate's seal. The speed at which the qi of heaven and earth was dissipating was also increasing. There was no reaction from the Daoist side. They were probably maintaining a vigilant attitude and did not try to destroy the array formation. Therefore, as time passed, it would not be long before the array formation broke. When that happened, the upper and lower realms would be connected, and everyone would know everything. Chu Xiu had already taken the initiative. Naturally, there was no need for him to continue sneaking around and hiding. Chu Xiu's words had a huge impact on the 3 people present. Heavenly King Shen took a long time to digest this information. At that moment, he suddenly felt a sense of sympathy for the various sects in the pugilistic world. They were still on guard against Chu Xiu in the lower realm, carefully calculating whether the Kunlun devil cult would harm their interests. But in the end, he was already fighting in another world and had already achieved great results. How pitiful were the sects in the lower realm. They only knew what Chu Xiu wanted to tell them, such as the secrets of the heavenly gate. And the things that Chu Xiu did not want to tell them, such as what was in front of them, no matter how scheming they would not be able to predict these things. Heavenly King Shen let out a long sigh. After digesting this information, he asked Fang Qi Shao, 7th young master, "Are you willing to follow Cult Master Chu to the Daoist?" Fang Qi Shao did not even think before nodding. "Yes. Of course I'm going. It's so fun." "No, it's so challenging. How can I not be part of it?" Seeing Fang Qi Shao's expression, Chu Xiu could not help but smile and shake his head. "Sect Master Shen, Brother Fang's ambition does not lie here. It's useless for you to force him to study those methods of managing a sect." Heavenly King Shen said helplessly, "Do you think I want him to learn these things? But he's the next leader of Sword King City. If he can't even learn these basic things, how can he be the sect master?" Chu Xiu shook his head. "Sect Master Shen, you're wrong. It's precisely because these are the most basic things that Brother Fang is not willing to learn. As the leader of the Kunlun devil cult, I have more things to do, even involving the upper and lower realms. But I'm either outside or in seclusion most of the time. Naturally, there are people who are good at these things to take care of for me. As for me, as long as I can guarantee their absolute reliability and loyalty, that's enough. The pugilistic world is very complicated, but the world of martial artists is very pure. Brother Fang is a pure swordsman. Since that's the case, then don't let him waste his time on other things. As long as he focuses on the sword Dao, that's enough." Heavenly King Shen glanced at Fang Qi Shao, who was looking around with a wretched expression. He did not believe that this fellow was a pure person. Moreover, he had watched him grow up. How was this fellow pure? But Chu Xiu's words made sense. This was the supreme figure of the world, the devil cult's leader, Chu Xiu. Of course, Heavenly King Shen had to take his words seriously. After bidding farewell, Chu Xiu left with Fang Qi Shao and Long Longer. After they left, Heavenly King Shen immediately rushed back to gather the Sword King City's martial artists for a discussion. As for what the discussion was about, of course, it was about the upcoming arrival of the Daoist martial artists. This was nothing to Chu Xiu, but to the martial artists of the lower realm, it was enough to cause an earthquake. Logically speaking, that group of ancient martial artists should be their ancestors. But the problem was that they had not seen each other for 10,000 years. More accurately speaking, 10,000 years ago, they were the ones who had abandoned them. This was no small grudge. When they really descended to the lower realm, would they live in harmony? Dream on. Therefore, the Sword King City had to be prepared now. If the Daoist martial artists really descended to the lower realm, the Sword King City had to think about what kind of attitude they should use to treat them. Meanwhile, on Chu Xiu's side, after leaving the Sword King City, Fang Qi Shao patted his chest and said, "I finally escaped. Brother Chu, you saved my life. If I had stayed any longer, I'm afraid I would have suffocated to death." Sect Master Shen is a person who plans ahead. He is thinking too much. He also hopes that you can successfully take over the Sword King City. Chu Xiu enlightened them and led them back to the South Man Branch Palace. At the same time, he explained some of the Daoist common sense and rules to them. After bringing Fang Qi Shao and Long Longer back to the Daoist, the two of them also looked around in amazement. After all, Long Longer was the moon-worshipping church's saintess. She had some knowledge. At least, she wasn't like Fang Qi Shao, who acted like a country bumpkin who had never seen the world. After bringing these two people, Chu Xiu looked for Luo Feiheng, who was still in the lower realm. During the attack on the Heavenly Gate, Luo Feiheng also participated in the attack with a hull. Later, she found a cultivation method in the Heavenly Gate and began to cultivate in the Heavenly Gate. Luo Feiheng pushed the door open and said, "Great Sect Master Chu is very busy. How did you find the time to look for me?" After seeing that Fang Qi Xiao and Long Longer were also in the room, Luo Feiheng was surprised and said, "Why did you also bring them? Is this the reunion of the Longhu list?" Chu Xiu asked curiously, "How do you know she is the moon-worshipping church's saintess?" Chu Xiu remembered that the moon-worshipping church's saintess had never shown her true face in the Jianghu. Luo Feiheng shouldn't have seen her either. Luo Feiheng shrugged and said, "You don't understand a woman's intuition. I think women are often more accurate than men." Chu Xiu coughed and said, "I called you here because I want you to be a spy and infiltrate the disciples of the Prime Venerables. I heard that you obtained the Daoist body-tempering secret technique Tai mysterious art in the Heavenly Gate. In addition, your strength foundation has been tempered very well. You can become a disciple of the dragon-subduing divine general Su Tianya. On the other hand, Long Longer, you cultivate various demonic arts and secret techniques of the moon-worshipping church. Although the principles are different, the nature is very flexible and very compatible with Venerable Gu Yu's cultivation method. You can become a disciple of Venerable Gu Yu's faction." Seventh young Master Fang, who was at the side, rushed to answer, "In that case, I should become a disciple of Sword Venerable Ling Tian." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "No, I want you to become a disciple of the world's sword sections." Fang Qi Xiao was stunned. "Why am I different from them? Infiltrating a sect is much more difficult than infiltrating an ancient sovereign expert, okay?" Chu Xiu said, "Dragon subduing divine general and Venerable Gu Yu work together. It's very difficult to meet two disciples who meet their requirements at the same time, so it's easier to infiltrate. On the other hand, Venerable Ling Tian, Sheng Jiuyuan, is very picky and stubborn. I heard that he's not very satisfied with Yuan Fu. Otherwise, Yuan Fu wouldn't have rushed to participate in the Daluo Divine Palace contest." Chu Xiu paused for a moment and deliberated his tone before saying, "There's naturally no problem with your strength and talent. In fact, there aren't many sword Dao experts in the absolute heaven's younger generation who can stand shoulder to shoulder with you. But your personality, it's easy to clash with Sheng Jiuyuan. I'm afraid that even if I send you to Sheng Jiuyuan's side, he might not accept you, so it's safer to send you to the world sword sections." Fang Qi Xiao's eyes widened. What did this mean? Was she looking down on him? Chapter 13-19. Of course, Chu Xiu did not despise Fang Qi Xiao. Although he did despise Sheng Jiuyuan a little, sending Fang Qi Xiao to Sheng Jiuyuan's place felt a little irresponsible to Fang Qi Xiao. Although Chu Xiu could feel Sheng Jiuyuan's anger and killing intent when Sheng Jiuyuan came looking for trouble, it was not strong. At least, it was not as strong as Su Tianya's. Sheng Jiuyuan gave Chu Xiu the impression that Sheng Jiuyuan had not lost his disciple, but that he had lost face. Hence, he had come looking for Chu Xiu to take revenge and regain his face. It was obvious that to him, his face was far more important than his disciple. Chu Xiu patted Fang Qi Xiao's shoulder and said, "You're a man. It's normal for your task to be harder than those two women. Do you really have the nerve to compare yourself to them?" Fang Qi Xiao glanced at Long Longer and Luo Feiheng. He really wanted to say that he had the nerve to do so. He casually waved his hand and said, never mind, I'll just treat it as helping you this once." Long Longer said, "But how are you going to place us among those two prime sovereigns and the world's sword master? It's not a good thing when a pie falls from the sky. Even if those two are prime sovereigns who spend most of their time cultivating in the mountains and forests and lack the ability to scheme, they shouldn't be so careless." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "You don't have to worry about that. I'll handle it. I've been in the Daoist for so long. If I can't even handle such a small matter, won't I, Chu Xiu, be a waste of my reputation?" Chu Xiu arranged for Fang Qi Xiao to refine the sword soul and also told them some details about the Daoist, while he went to find someone to set up this matter. As for the person, Chu Xiu had already made up his mind. It would be the Divine Machinations sect master, Sikong Tan. It was Sikong Tan, who had once joined hands with Yuan Fu to kill him, but had fled with his tail between his legs in the end. In the exalted Divine Palace, the other party had been lucky enough to survive, and he had also left with ease. Chu Xiu knew all of this. However, Chu Xiu did not find trouble with him. First, it was a matter of vision. With Chu Xiu's current strength and status, it wasn't worth it for him to cause trouble for a sect leader of a small sect. Also, Chu Xiu really didn't have the time to find trouble with a small fry like him. At that time, Chu Xiu was still busy attacking the heavenly gates. But now, it was time for him to make use of him. The Southern Region's Divine Machinations sect. Ever since returning from the exalted Divine Palace, Sikong Tan had been in a daze, like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bow. The other cultivators of the Divine Machinations sect had no idea what had happened to their sect master. Had he been frightened by the demonic ghost in the exalted Divine Palace? Sikong Tan had been frightened, but not by the demonic ghost. Instead, he had been frightened by Chu Xiu. When he had joined hands with Yuan Fu to besiege Chu Xiu, Chu Xiu's invincible stance had already completely scared Sikong Tan out of his wits. He wasn't the type of martial artist that was filled with battle intent. Later, he learned that Chu Xiu had killed Xianxia and stepped into the martial immortal realm in the exalted Divine Palace. That had terrified him even more. When he recalled that he had participated in the siege against Chu Xiu, Sikong Tan felt his insides tremble. After waiting for several months, he didn't see Chu Xiu come looking for trouble. Only then did Sikong Tan breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed that after Chu Xiu stepped into the martial immortal realm, his horizons and bearing had improved. He likely wouldn't bother with Sikong Tan over such matters. That was why Sikong Tan had breathed a sigh of relief recently. At that moment, Sikong Tan had changed into a new set of golden robes. He was preparing to leave for the Profound Heart Palace's sect master's disciple acceptance ceremony. Although Sikong Tan's Divine Machinations sect wasn't very powerful in the southern region, he had a wide network of friends. He was a man of wealth and power. Thus, every sect would come looking for him if they had any matters. In the past, Sikong Tan had been very nervous and had declined many invitations. Now that he could relax, it was time for him to manage his connections. After instructing the other disciples to guard the sect, Sikong Tan left alone. The Profound Heart Palace wasn't far from his Divine Machinations sect. It would only take him a day to go there and back. Thus, there was no need for him to bring so many people with him. Just as Sikong Tan was halfway there, passing by a small forest path, a voice suddenly came from behind him. "Sikong Tan, do you still recognize me?" Sikong Tan's complexion instantly changed. His entire body started trembling like a sieve. How could he not recognize this voice? Previously, when he had nightmares, it was this voice that resounded in his head. He originally thought that the other party had already let him go. Yet, the other party appeared when he was most relaxed. That instantly caused Sikong Tan to collapse. In the next instant, Sikong Tan came back to his senses. With a putong sound, he directly knelt on the ground and cried bitterly, begging for mercy, "Official Chu, spare me. Back then, I was blinded by lard and joined hands with Yuan Fu to deal with you. Actually, I also didn't want to, but Yuan Fu used his identity as Sword Exalted Ling Tian's successor to threaten me. I was also forced into a corner. Official Chu, I have elders to take care of, children to take care of, and a group of Divine Machinations sect disciples to take care of. Please let me go this once. Sikong Tan suddenly playing such a trick on him made Chu Xiu dumbfounded. From the lower realm to the Daoist, he had seen many martial artists. Being strong did not mean that one's methods were strong, nor did it mean that one's mental state was firm. But once one reached the heaven and earth profound opening realm, one could be considered an expert who could establish a sect in the Daoist. In the lower realm, one could even stand at the peak. Of the enemies who had died by his hands, some had fought him to the bitter end, some had cursed him, and some had even run away. But Sikong Tan was the only one who had lowered his voice and begged for mercy. This guy could be considered a weirdo. With his actions, Chu Xiu had wanted to say something, but he could only swallow back the words that he had prepared. After reorganizing his words, Chu Xiu said, "Don't worry, I won't kill you. If I wanted to kill you, you wouldn't be alive now." Hearing Chu Xiu say that he wouldn't kill him, Sikong Tan heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly crawled up. However, Chu Xiu then said, "But I can spare you. You can be spared from death, but you cannot be spared from punishment. Help me do something. If you succeed, the grudges between us will be written off. If you fail..." Before Chu Xiu could finish, Sikong Tan interrupted, "As long as official Chu spare me this time, I will definitely follow official Chu at your beck and call, even if I have to die 10,000 times. Not to mention one thing, even if you ask me to do 100 things, this subordinate can still help you." Although Sikong Tan was a coward who was afraid of death, his brain worked very quickly. In just a few sentences, he had become a subordinate, as if he himself was Chu Xiu's man. Chu Xiu nodded and said in a low voice, "The task I will give you is very simple. It is to fabricate a reasonable identity for two unidentified people and make them appear in front of Su Tianya and Fang Baidu in a very coincidental manner. Then, they will accept them as disciples." Sikong Tan was shocked when he heard this. He wasn't an idiot. Of course, he knew why Chu Xiu was doing this. Just as Sikong Tan was about to say something, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Don't tell me that you can't do this. In the Southern Territory, although your Divine Machine sect isn't the strongest, you are the most involved. You sell weapons and spell formations in exchange for information. Sikong Tan, you are smooth and slick and have friendly relations with all the major sects in the Southern Territory. If you can't do this, no one else can. I know this is difficult, but your life should be more valuable than this, right, Sikong Tan? Now, I only have one question for you. Can you do this?" Sikong Tan immediately swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He nodded vigorously and said, "Yes." Chu Xiu nodded in satisfaction and said to the inner demon in his mind, "Divide a bit of power into his mind and monitor him." The inner demon immediately shouted, "Chu Xiu, you are too much. Time and time again. Are you really treating me as a consumable? I haven't even reconstructed my body, and you have already divided all my power. Don't worry. My research on the demonic path of creation has deepened. I will help you reconstruct your body very soon. When you have a real body, you can cultivate like a human. You can make up for all the power you lost." Although the inner demon had been tricked by Chu Xiu more than once or twice, the chance to truly become a human was in Chu Xiu's hands. He could only agree. Chu Xiu waved his hand and imprinted a bit of the inner demon's power into Sikong Tan's mind. He said indifferently, "I will leave a bit of restriction on you for monitoring purposes. But don't worry. As long as you are obedient and help me complete this task, I will naturally remove this restriction for you." Sikong Tan smiled bitterly and said, "Don't worry, Lord. I will do my best to help you complete this task." Exchanging an opportunity for his life was something that Sikong Tan couldn't do even if he wanted to. A month later, in the Southern Territory's dense forest, Sikong Tan was carefully explaining their identities to Luo Feiheng and Long Ling. The two of you must remember that you are the orphans of the Southern Territory's Thousand-Mile County's Grazing Horse Villa. After the Grazing Horse Villa was destroyed by the Chilan bandits, you wandered the world and accidentally obtained the inheritance of two deceased prime sovereigns. You have cultivated all the way until now and have come back for revenge. If anyone asks about your identities, you only need to remember that you are the children of the Grazing Horse Villa's 27th head, Luo Fei, and the 32nd head, Long Wanli. You can just say that you are too young to remember anything else. Luo Feiheng sized up Sikong Tan and said, I say, Fatty, are you reliable or not? Why do I feel that your plan is a bit perfunctory? Sikong Tan was only slightly chubby, and he hated people calling him Fatty the most. But knowing the identities of the two in front of him, Sikong Tan could only helplessly explain, Miss Luo, please don't worry. How could I dare to be perfunctory with the task that official Chu has given me? In the past, the Grazing Horse Villa had 72 heads. Luo Fei and Long Wanli did exist, but their presence was very low. Now, almost everyone who knew them is dead, let alone anyone who knew their daughters. Also, it doesn't matter if this information is true or false. Official Chu only needs the two ladies to become the disciples of the two prime sovereigns. As long as they believe it, it will be considered a success. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.